Hello everyone, this is Group 6 and our presentation today is about an institutional-based view of global IPR history. The authors of the article are M.W. Peng, D. Ahlstrom, S.M. Carraher, W.S. Shai, and the group members are Rhoda, Lillian, Ashwarya, and Eduardo. The presentation will try to summarize the article by focusing on an introduction, study findings, focusing on Lululemon as a company, and tying the findings and strategy to Lululemon. So therefore, what is IPR? IPR stands for Intellectual Property Rights, and this can be defined as the legal rights that protect the creation, inventions from intellectual activities of the mind. Examples of IPR are patent and copyrights. This article endeavors to leverage the history of IPR around the world to develop an institution-based view of IPR to explain its development and predict its future. This paper will focus on a crucial debate of IPR between USA and China. Article will also focus on IPR history of other countries to help understand the generalized global framework. The paper will also focus on developing an institution-based view of IPR history. Some of the questions that the article seeks to answer are: does history matter? If so, how can we use history to improve theory? Number 2, what does institution-based view have to say about the violation of IPR in China? Thirdly, what insights does institution-based view offer to other countries that struggle with IPR protection? And lastly, how does the view help MNEs struggling with how to respond to evolving IPR environment? From the article, we see that USA has been on the lead when it comes to IPR protection. This, however, has not been the case. In the 19th century, history shows that USA was a leading IPR violator. The research focuses on USA and China history because their IPR history is one of the research areas in international business. By seeking answers from history, we can therefore say that IPR violation in China is similar to the experience of USA centuries ago. In 1980 and 1990s, IPR violation in China was widely spread. The institutional-based view in the IB literature has its roots in sociology and organizational institutionalism and economic institutionalism. Institution-based view focuses on the dynamic interaction between institutions and organizations and considers strategic choices as the outcome of such interactions. Thus, the key proposition of institution-based view is that individuals and organizations rationally pursue their interests and make strategic choices with formal and informal constraint in a given institutional framework. We further develop the institutional-based view by identifying and leveraging 3 underlying mechanisms, which are path dependence, long-term process, and institution transition. On the next slide, we'll see the definition of the 3 mechanisms. Path dependence is historical trajectories with positive feedback that become inherently difficult to reverse or alter. Long-term process calls for a focus on the long spans of time during which institutional effects unfold and accumulate. Institutional transitions are fundamental and comprehensive changes introduced to the formal and informal rules of the game that affect organizations as players. Intellectual property rights in China. IPR violation is widely spread in China. Counterfeiting and piracy is prevalent. Reasons for such violations are contributed to culture and politics. Throughout much of China's history, the emphasis on public ownership is at odds with the emphasis on private rights inherent. The political and cultural argument can be rejected. This is For example, during the Beijing politics, no counterfeit product was sold. In summary, culture and politics on their own cannot explain the IPR violation in China. The key, we argue, lies on institutions, a concept much broader than culture and politics. IPR institutions provide the incentive structure and that affect the cost and benefit of doing business. Due to IPR violation in China, the question to ask is, do institutions in China work? They work, but the penalties for violations are minimal, hardly enough to deter IPR violation. This is because China feels that having such an increase in IPR penalties will lead to a USA gaining more than China itself. On this slide, we will see the path dependence of IPR violation in the US. USA was a leading IPR violator in the early centuries. The USA role as a leading IPR violator during the era is known outside academia. USA supported IPR violation in the 19th century and abruptly stopped in 1891. Cost-benefit analysis showed that protection of foreign IPR would only benefit the foreign others at the expense of the domestic consumers. Path dependency institutions supporting the foreign IPR violation would be difficult to change. However, in the long run, it can be changed.
Now we look at long-term processes under IPR. According to Lawrence, Sadapi, and Laker, institutions evolve. Institutions, individuals, and organizations often conform to pressures of long-term isomorphism, which makes them change in the long term. For example, the United States that eventually switched from violation of IPR to the extent of enacting major institutional changes that were imposed on other countries. IPR dates back to the 19th century, where American IP holders sought to take advantage of the significant improvements in communication, transportation, and scale production to start selling their products outside of the United States. This led to a major conference in 1884 in Switzerland of academics, writers, and diplomats to develop a multilateral copyright treaty. This conference and subsequent treaty in part formed the basis for minimum national standards and led to major institutional changes in the United States. We look at the Goldstein Treaty that was in 2003. International Copyright Act, known as the Chase Act, named after Senator Jonathan Chase from Rhode Island, for the first time extending IPR protection to foreign works. So what led to major institutional transitions? There was concerted effort from both the external and internal players in trade to ensure that IPR is respected across the board. We look at external isomorphic pressures from different countries in the long term and internal strategic choices made by entrepreneurs within commercial and political organizations which believed they were better off altering the existing institutional framework at some margin, according to North. As IPR evolves, we look at the institutional transitions that happened. In the late 19th century, rapid economic development turned the United States from being a net consumer to a net producer of intellectual products. As more Americans wrote books and more American publishers and producers marketed their products overseas, they demanded better IPR protection from foreign governments. This request wasn't granted by other governments without reciprocal treaties. It led to piracy of the work of Americans elsewhere, mostly in Canada, which happened in the 19th century. and this promoted the US government to change the IPR laws to start offering IPR protection in the United States to foreign authors, inventors, and publishers. In 1998, Maslon and Nelson viewed IPR protection locally and internationally as both a cost-benefit analysis, which also requires legitimacy. For a country to be globally respected, it must be IPR compliant. A case in point, in the 19th century, United States, and in the 21st century, we see China. Traditionally, IPR violation is viewed as a misallocation of resources to illegal activities, which may retard economic development, according to Jaffe and Lina in 2007. Moving toward a more globally generalizable framework, we look at beyond the US and China case. We see that institution-based view of IPR history can be developed into a more generalizable framework. Like United States and China, from a path-dependable perspective, most countries have chosen to disrespect IPR. We see Switzerland and Netherlands that had rejected patent laws until after revolutions requiring free trade movement. IPR faced discrimination in many countries, like in the United Kingdom, Japan, Germany, and Spain, where the requirements differed, ranging from longer application periods, which which happened in some countries, and these were toward foreign applications, which were costly, but also some required in-person approvals for foreign investors, single narrow claims, to mention but a few, and all these frustrated economies that were taking off. Stronger IPR protection was urged to probably choke the knowledge spillovers from industrialized countries to developing countries. A case in point is how India in 1970 deliberately weakened its IPR protection from 1911 British Patents and Design Act, which saw foreign multinational drug makers' market share in India drop from 68% in 1970 to 25% in 2007. That was according to Gwyneth and Raman in their 2012 edition. Moving on, we look at IPR and different propositions that were made, and the first proposition was the path dependence. In the early stage of economic development, most countries will choose to disrespect IPR, especially foreign IPR. We see that powerful forces of isomorphism push many countries to aspire to first obtain and enhance their legitimacy. We see how it took countries like United States, China, Japan, Brazil, India, Germany several decades to create effective enforcement regimes. Some countries like India were pressured into IPR development as it was a requirement by the World Trade Organization. In the second proposition, that is long-term processes, we see that expected trends are toward better protection of IPR, including foreign IPR. Here, economies tend to experience setbacks as they focus on improving their IPR protection, both locally and internationally. For example, the German machine tool maker, J.E. Reinecker, we see Mikhail Kalashnikov, the inventor of the legendary automatic AK-47 rifle. We see how he made nothing from his gun designs. His IPR were completely expropriated by the Soviet state. Brazil enhanced IPR protection by removing process patents in 1969 and by immediately rectifying TRIPS in 1996 without invoking the clause that would permit developing countries to delay TRIPS implementation until 2005, as India did. Under Preposition 3, we look at the long-term processes, and herein we see that in the short run, reverting to IPR violation is likely to occur during certain periods of time and in certain industries and countries. As noted, while institutions are resilient, changes are not impossible. While external pressures due to isomorphism forces generally due to isomorphism forces generally push countries and firms to become more respectful of IPR, institutional transitions are ultimately enabled by strategic choices made by internal champions and change agents. Underpinning such strategic choices, fostering institutional transition in favor of better IPR protection is typically a cost-benefit analysis. For example, Germany and Japan, with the growing export markets and technological capabilities, they felt the need for foreign IPR protection. In South Korea, it was until there were valuable patentable assets to protect that such institutional changes took place. Under Preposition 4, we look at institutional transitions. Institutional transitions in favor of better IPR protection, especially better protection of foreign IPR, will not take place until perceived benefits to the adopting countries and firms outweigh the perceived costs. Propelled by the two other theoretical mechanisms, an institutional-based view predicts that despite the pull of path dependence, in the long run, countries such as China will become genuinely interested in better IPR protection and enforcement when perceived benefits outweigh costs. Since such institutional transitions do not happen overnight, experts call for a long view. Thus, institutional transitions are more likely when China produces more commercially productive patents. Eventually, China will become an IPR power when its IPR are pirated outside of China. This is as presented by Loho and Peng in their 2013 edition. In all, we look at several arguments and discussions that have been made on IPR by several writers and their views and opinions. It is thought that if we embrace a more global and longer view of history, we can see gradual improvement in IPR in many countries. This indicates that historical evidence can help us avoid spurious labeling of some phenomena as new or behavior of some countries and as unprecedented. It is believed that a greater appreciation of history is to look for similarities to overcome differences. This is as per Jones and Carraher in their 2006 edition. It is also argued that economic development in China and other developing countries, along with continued globalization, are likely to facilitate improved IPR protection, just as economic development in the United States and other developed countries did in the 19th century. Moving on, we see some scholars argue that besides United States and China, that the generalized framework suggests that despite the initial path dependence in favor of disrespecting, especially foreign IPR, institutional transitions are likely to propel countries toward better IPR protection. Then we look at the argument that the pace of change in developing countries requires firms and institutions to adjust to faster economic growth, technological discontinuities, and increasing globalization. This is made by Corey and the writers in their 2014 edition.
Now let's start the topic, an institution-based view of global IPR history with a Canadian company. Lululemon Athletica is a Canadian athletic apparel company that specializes in athletic apparels. Its headquarters is in Vancouver, Canada, where their corporate office employs over 2,000 people. Here are some key facts and information about the company. Its history. Lululemon was founded in 1998 by Chip Wilson in Vancouver, Canada. The company started with one store selling yoga clothes and has since expanded over 460 stores worldwide. Lululemon's products include yoga pants, sports bra, leggings, shorts, t-shirts, and other workout gear. The company also offers men's clothing and accessories. The mission of Lululemon is to elevate the world from mediocrity to excellence, and this is demonstrated in the company's merchandise, staff, and retail environment. The company's founder, Chip Wilson, was unimpressed with mainstream sports labels and set out to design the finest quality, highest performing clothing the yoga industry had ever seen. Today, Lulu expands the scope of its goal to include community involvement, social impact, environmental stewardship, and employee empowerment. Lululemon's goal was always to become a center for mindfulness, healthy living, and community rather than just selling clothes. The brand, referred to as Lulu by its cult following, produces a distinctively communal experience in stores all over the world, providing customers with enthusiasm, support, knowledge, and a unique shopping experience. The business has always been quality obsessed and laser focused on technical fabrics and designs for yogis that enhance performance. Since then, they have grown to produce streetwear, loungewear, and apparels for sports like running and training, as well as other sweaty activities. But yoga will always be the heart of Lulu. In their international stores and showrooms, the public can take yoga lessons every week. Lululemon's target market is primarily women who are interested in yoga, fitness, and an active lifestyle. However, the company has been expanding its reach to include men and a wider range of activities. Fans of Lululemon gush about the exquisite craftsmanship and performance. Lululemon is known for its premium quality products and innovative designs. The company focuses on creating a lifestyle brand that inspires and empowers its customers. Lululemon's marketing strategy includes sponsoring fitness events, collaborating with influencers and athletes, and using social media to engage with its customers. The company also offers free yoga classes in its stores as a way to build community and promote its brand. Lululemon's revenue has been steadily increasing over the years, with a reported revenue of $4.4 billion in 2020. The company has been expanding globally with stores in North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. Lululemon has a strong commitment to corporate responsibility, including sustainable sourcing practices, reducing its environmental footprint, and supporting local community through its social impact programs.
Now we will see how this study applies to this Canadian company. According to the World Trade Organization, intellectual property rights are rights that a person receives as acknowledgement over a creation of their own. This right gives the exclusive use of this creation to the owner for a specific period of time. In Canada, the government's office in charge of giving these titles to people and organizations is the Canadian Intellectual Property Office, which has divided IPR into different intellectual property protection categories: patent, trademark, industrial design, copyright, and trade secrets. Patents give exclusive right to inventions and their reproduction. These inventions can be physical products or processes that provide a new way of doing something or gives a new solution to a problem. Trademarks are the right given usually for design's use to distinguish a product or a service, but can also be made of words or sounds that help differentiate the brand. Industrial design are the rights given to specific visual features or shapes, configuration patterns, ornaments, or combination of these that may be applied to a finished product. Copyright is the protection given to original work and gives the right of reproduction to the author. The work can be literary, artistic, or musical in nature. Trade secrets includes the protection of any valuable information for a business that is usually used as differentiator in the market. In business, we look at the concept of institution-based view as a way of understanding that the success of an organization is enabled and constrained by institutions. These institutions can be formal, like laws, regulations, and governments, and informal institutions, which are the cultures, ethics, and moral norms of the society that surrounds these businesses. These institutions help reduce uncertainty, stipulate decision guidelines, and provide the meaning of the environment. The authors of this study define the institution-based view as a dynamic interaction between the institutions and organizations, and consider strategies choice as the outcome of such an interaction. And by talking about strategic choices, Lululemon has been working with their intellectual property as a central element of their strategic growth. Since the beginning, they have protected their products with patents, industrial designs, and trademarks in Canada and around the world. Lululemon's logo has played a key role in how the market has adapted the brand. They see themselves as a design-led company all the way through, and this is in every part of their DNA as a company. Lululemon holds 45 registered industrial designs in Canada and 48 design patents in the US, most of which provide protection for athletic wear designs. In Canada, a registered industrial design provides you with 5 years of protection and the possibility of extending your protection for another 5 years. As mentioned before, intellectual property has been a part of their business strategy and it is working. As we can see in their 5-year income statement provided by the Wall Street Journal, where there is a clear growth trend since 2018, increasing in their sales revenue and earnings before taxes. To continue their growth around the world, Lululemon must comprehend what this study is trying to show us, and how we need to learn from our history. To help us understand, we will explore some more examples of what this is currently happening with this company. In November 2021, Lululemon sued Peloton Interactive, an American exercise equipment and media company based in New York City. Lululemon's allegation is that Peloton copied some of their designs like sport bras and workout leggings. On the other hand, there are several Lululemon duplicates you can find online that are designed and manufactured in different countries like China and Vietnam. Unlike what happened with Peloton, Lululemon doesn't look like it is trying to sue these designers. Our best guess is because they are based in countries where IP protection might be weaker than the ones in Canada or the US. Lululemon is choosing what fights to pursue. And as mentioned in Proposition 1, institutions in developing countries historically have been choosing to disrespect IPR or have lighter protections policies, especially for foreign IPR. This is a risk that Lululemon must consider as they keep on growing, given that piracy and imitation might appear and could be very difficult to avoid and control. Proposition 2 and 3 also help us understand that the IPR process might take longer in certain countries and industries, and that even in developed countries where the IP protection is higher, we can always encounter unexpected obstacles because these processes are not usually linear, given that the respect on IP is mostly related to the perceived value and change in incentives that the institutions may have. Proposition 4 lets us know how institutional transitions will take place when the perceived benefits of implementing IP protection on countries and firms exceed the apparent cost of not doing so. Therefore, Lululemon must seek different alternatives to assure that their growth strategy will work, even though they can and will have this kind of setbacks with unfair competition. This paper demonstrates how history can be directly relevant in informing a crucial debate that is still ongoing. Apparently, history is in some way a cyclical phenomenon and it tends to repeat itself. The USA once was the leading IPR violator and now is the highest IPR protector and motivator. In conclusion, history really matters. Knowing and understanding our history will help us avoid future mistakes by looking for similarities to overcome differences. As Douglas C. North, a Nobel Prize recipient, mentioned, a few of man's economic problems are new, and most have occurred endlessly in the past. Thank you all for your attention.